I start telling people about hell, I might just scare them off. Where are you going to scare them off to? Hell number 2? Or are you just going to sit there and let them burn?
Got Films is a full-service production company that provides motion picture quality content and production services for use in the film and TV industry. Looking for a seasoned crew, high-quality equipment, or other production services for your film, TV, commercial, corporate convention, sports, news, or interview project? Your search stops here. Some of our projects include NASCAR, American Restoration, Pawn Stars, Counting Cars, Top Chef, BattleBots, Forge and Fire, and Street Outlaws. We have also produced over 60 feature films and documentaries. We're ready for all your needs. Whatever your project, whatever your budget, big or small, Got Films got you. GotFilms.com.
All right. This is Chris from Don't Let Them Burn. Welcome to the program. This is Hollywood Matrix. We're back, and this time with the Sound of Freedom. But before we get into that, check out don'tletthemburn.com. Check out my Telegram channel, which is in the links below, and that's where I share documentaries. I share files, PDFs, and stuff, so resources that you can use to start doing your own research. So check us out. We also share a lot of news. Almost every day there's news being shared. There's so much coming out now you can't even keep up. So check out the Telegram channel. And also I'm on different social media platforms. And you can check us out there wherever it is. Sorry about the phone call here or the ding. So anyway, today's Sound of Freedom, and I have a guest with me, John Brisson. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. Hope you're doing well. Hope everybody out there listening is doing well as they can in these trying times. And very glad to be back, brother.
All right. Good to have you. And everybody in the chat, the chat is starting to fill up here. So anyway, we're going to start this review by first saying there are some people that don't want you to see this film, but not for the reasons you might think, okay? And we'll cover some other stuff as we go. One thing is we have some people saying don't go see the film because it's a Mormon film or because of Angel Studios, and we'll get to all that. But that's not a reason not to see the film, because we go and see all sorts of films that are made by pagans every day, So that's kind of a hypocritical statement. So this film, I saw it in 2021 at a special gathering, and I saw it twice, and it moved everybody in the crowd because it's a serious topic, and there are not that many films that touch this topic, and even though we're gonna rip it apart after the main review, it's still, we're not attacking anyone personally or trying to take away from what the movie's doing by pretty much enlightening people to what's going on in this world after the big thing that hit us 3 years ago. You guys know what that is. The amount of information that came out on this type of trafficking issue, it flooded the internet. But I knew about this stuff. I'm pretty sure John knew about this stuff too before that. And there were arrests at the Super Bowl shows, parties, Super Bowl parties. They're major for this type of trafficking stuff. So don't act like it's not happening. It's happening. And there's mountains of evidence for that. Most people want to put their head in the sand, but that's not what this is about. So anyway, anything you want to say before we get into the movie, John?
So, many years ago, one of my first times I was on a conspiracy podcast. Now, this was before I was a born again Christian. When I was on the Higher Side Chats, I had discussed Operation Underground Railroad briefly. I don't remember if it was my first or second appearance, but it was in the members section. when I was discussing kind of Glenn Beck's. I talked about NECMEC, the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and ICMEC, the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And Operation Underground Railroad had kind of came into my view when researching those things, right? So I had mentioned Tim Ballard, and I had mentioned his vast connections to Glenn Beck. And so I only talked about it very briefly. So it's always been something that's been on my radar for a while. And then I have I've talked about ritualized and institutionalized pedophilia for many years. Have spoken about the Franklin scandal. I'm writing a book on the Finders operation. I have done numerous shows to disprove what they call the witch hunt narrative, that in many of those cases during the 80s and 90s, that the bare minimum ritual abuse occurred, I should say the bare minimum sexual abuse and molestation occurred, but the grand maximum ritual abuse occurred in many cases, like the McMartin preschool case, for example.
Mm.
So I've talked about this for a long time. And I've had some people, not many, but many people get angry at me for things that we're going to discuss later about my issues with Tim Ballard and Angel Studios and Operation Underground Railroad. They'd be like, "What? You don't care about children? Like, why are you discussing this at all and your issues with this?" And I'm like, "No, I do, but I think that these things are important. We're supposed to bring attention to the unfruitful fruits of darkness. And it's not that the movie Sound of Freedom of itself, it does bring into focus and the forefront a lot of people's attention to human trafficking, which is a major problem and an abomination to the Lord, right?
Right.
But there were movies like Taken beforehand, right, with Liam
Mhm.
Neeson, that also brought attention to it too.
Yeah.
And so it is something that has been out there. And has steadily increased in the patriot movements and the truth movements, the knowledge of things like the Franklin scandal or Epstein,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so yes, this is important for us to, definitely become aware of this and to stand against it, obviously, as born again Christians. But there's a balance, and I guess you'll get into more later of some of our or even my issues with it as a whole. But it doesn't take away from the message of the movie itself, though. And you
Yeah.
are right. It is, hypocritical as far as telling people to not see the movie. Um, and yet we do fund, or we go see, Hollywood, movies.
Yeah.
But I myself has said that and we'll talk about it, that I don't recommend really anybody see the movie, but I understand your logic and reasoning into that, and I'll might discuss my issues with it later.
Yeah.
But again, I am pleased. I couldn't say otherwise that this has become to people's attention, because I think it's very important and it's something that people should know about. But as with anything when it comes to um media, especially media that does get attention. Like there was a campaign, right, to get people to not see the movie, but at the same time was that to create tension to get people to see the movie. Like there's a whole nother discussion about that too, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so in the fog of war, we really don't know, brother.
Yeah.
We really don't know. But in the end, though, I do think, it is a movie that is well done. It is
Mhm.
a movie that has good cinematography and good
Yeah.
acting in it for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not gonna, I guess I would say if you see the movie, just be aware of the things that we might bring up at the end of at the end of the show. That's all I'd really have
Right.
to say in that regard, as far as a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Is it too
Yeah.
harsh?
No, no, it's cool. But people go out and see Marvel movies, and Marvel belong to Disney, and Disney is they are unashamed of what they're trying to do to children. So you know, we have those issues. If this is your first time watching one of our reviews here, this is a Christian review, so If you're easily offended, you might want to check out now. This is a spoiler review, so we're gonna get detailed, and let's go. All right, so Sound of Freedom, like you said, it's well made. Cinematography is good. The writing's good. I got a couple holes in the plot, but from what I've been hearing is this movie was either made 5 years or 8 years ago, depending on who you're listening to. And like I said, I saw it twice before in 2021, and at that time they didn't have distribution. So this is something I want to clear up too, because many people think Angel Studios was involved from the beginning. No, what happened is it was under Fox, 20th Century Fox, and Disney bought Fox, so they inherited the movie. They went through court battles and whatnot to not get the movie out because Disney doesn't want to, whatever the reason is. I can't tell you what's in people's mind, but I could see some of the motives. They don't want you to see the movie, right? And so from there, something happened where they got the rights from Disney, and then they went to Angel Studios, and coincidentally, not coincidentally, but Tim is a Mormon. Angel Studios is Mormon, and the angel for Angel Studios is Moroni. If you didn't know that, Christian. So now, as we get into the film, the two kids are taken from Honduras by a fake entertainment recruiter named Ghislaine. Now that's pretty interesting that they use the name Ghislaine because it's tied to Epstein. It's just so weird, right? So after that happens, that's the beginning of the movie. So then they get into where they're showing real abductions in these foreign countries that are very um, triggering for the audience because you see people just riding up on dirt bikes or whatever and just snatching these children. And one of the people, they were right next to a person in some, I don't know where they were, some building, and the person sleeping looks like a shelter or something, and the baby was right next to the parent, and they just went right there and took the baby, no problem. Didn't even like act like he was doing anything wrong. So that's how the movie opens up, and so then we get to where I guess it's DHS. They're keeping an eye on certain words we can't use. Let's just say it. A person that loves young children, right? And so they arrest him, and then they see that he's very connected to be able to proliferate, not proliferate, but get kids. And so Tim now, the Jim Caviezel plays Tim Ballard, and so Tim acts as though he's interested in getting children to this pedophile that I said that's in the prison to give up at least one source for the trafficking. Okay, and so um, the, the guy here is like, oh, you expect me to believe that you're one of us, and so Tim kind of like dines him a little bit, and then he kind of warms up and starts giving up some of the secrets. Then Tim lets him know that he's now arrested, and the name of the kid that he told him about is named Teddy Bear. Okay, and so uh, in between that, Tim tells him about the scripture about having a millstone around your neck. It's better to have that than to, lead one of these young ones astray, right? And so Teddy Bear is promised to Tim for the whole weekend. So these guys are really into it. Okay, so that was a whole thing to get him to reveal secrets. And he says, "I thought I could trust you," and Tim says, "Never trust a pedophile." Okay, all right. So that's the first. That's the opening act right there. Okay. So Teddy Bear ended up getting rescued. His name is Miguel Aguilar, something like that. He signs. He has signs of sexual abuse, lacerations. They didn't say where, but you can imagine he's a boy, and he's 8 years old. And I believe he was taken when he was 6. Okay, 6 or 7. And now Miguel, as he's warming up to Tim, wants Tim to find his sister. Okay, so that's the movie revolves around mostly the sister. All right. So now, anyone want to say anything about that before we go?
Just a few things. One, Tim Ballard, before he worked for the Department of Homeland Security, allegedly, according to him, but when the CIA was asked, they can't disclose. They can disclose former agents per se if the person allows it, but if he's a current agent, they can't disclose that either. Okay, and so that's interesting to note that he allegedly, according to his own words, worked for the CIA initially, and then eventually started working for the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, and so that is through Tim's own um his own mouth allegedly. And then I think that's really all I have to say.
Right there.
I mean, it opens up pretty interesting, pretty action packed. It's to tug on emotionality and heartstrings as well too.
Mhm.
And the Gazelle kind of gets the children through like child modeling like contracts,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
which is very similar to Epstein also pulling girls for models off the street too as well. You have the story of that was given by Virginia Farmer of Maria Farmer, not Virginia Farmer, of Ghislaine Ivanka Trump in a limo driving around trying to pull girls off the street for modeling for Epstein and Trump allegedly. Okay. So that is a common tactic
Mhm.
into child trafficking networks is child modeling and child uh like beauty pageants
Yes.
and stuff like that,
Yes.
everything. So that is common.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are unaware of that, right? And you also see in the movie too something that does happen where their father kind of drops them off in the care of the child modeling agency, right?
Yes.
you
Yes.
know
Hmm.
which it does happen. We should be more vigilant as parents, but it does happen.
Right.
And I guess something we should make note too is most child trafficking and human trafficking cases, or even pedophile cases within the United States of America, a lot of them are within families. A lot of them are abductions of a family member or a close family friend taking a kid instead of random abductions. But random abductions do still occur, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so that should be made known. But yes, it was that's something I did want to talk about was kind of like the whole child modeling
Hmm.
aspect of it when you talked about Ghislaine and go a little bit deeper into that. That the movie does spend a little bit of time of discussing that through a narrative standpoint.
Yes, it does. And when I was younger, and I'm unaware of a lot of things, I would have taken my child to these modeling because the people would always say you need to model, you need to be in show business and all this stuff, and all the abuse that goes on in
Yep.
those areas. It's actually nothing new, and there are films out there about it. So now, oh, and by the way, this movie is, as far as they tell in their interviews, Tim and the rest, that this movie is 4 or 5 incidents allegedly put together for one movie. All right, so there's if some of the inconsistencies could be because of that as well. So now, let's see here. So when Tim and Miguel are talking, the little boy, they go to the past where he went through whatever he went through, and the scene is of a van with children, and they're taken to a shipping container. Shipping containers are very popular with these people, and they even showed a scene where when one of the traffickers opened the container, it was smelly in there because they're in there for days, pooping whatever, and can't take a shower. So it gets pretty detailed, and so they show that Miguel is sold and taken to Tijuana, Mexico, but he's rescued because of the information from the pedo that's in prison. And so then he's returned to his dad, who asks, "Can you sleep at night?" He's asking Tim this: "Can you sleep at night knowing that one of your children's bed is empty because clearly they don't have the daughter yet?" Okay, and so then that trafficker is interrogated.
Mm.
They show the sister, Rosia, is marked with a tattoo of a crown. I'm guessing that symbolizes a princess. I'm not sure you have any information on that. Is it like a princess
No,
tattoo?
I believe your hypothesis is correct. Yes.
Okay, all right. And then she's sent into a horrible situation, which they clearly couldn't show you everything, but a fully grown, I would say, a guy, early 50s, came in there with a bottle of alcohol and did whatever he did. So, Department of Homeland Security won't allow Tim to take on the mission for whatever bureaucracy, but they have a description of Ghislaine, aka Liz. Liz, if that's even her real name, was a model, one of those what do you call those people with the thing across the chest, the ladies that do the pageantry.
Former beauty pageant, like a beauty queen.
Beauty pageants, yeah, yeah. She from there. They don't have a record of her leaving Colombia or anything. So somehow she got into that business. Okay, so then we get up to where we meet the ex cartel member Pompeo. He buys kids and set them free. Okay, so he has his own business doing that. Well connected, and Pompeo asks Tim, "Why are you doing this?" And then Tim says, "Because God's kids are not for sale." Now, this term God is so general, right? We know that Tim is talking about the God of the Bible. Okay. So don't, when you watch, if you haven't watched this movie yet, realize that he's not talking about the God of the Bible. Okay. Anything you want to say about that first?
Uh, no, he's not because he is a Mormon.
Right.
So, yes. So anytime, and actually, Jim Caviezel as well too is Catholic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he pushes straight up Mary worship,
Hmm.
quite often in his interviews and everything. And so, yes, when Jim Caviezel talks about God, it's not talking about the God of the Bible,
Yeah.
the God whom we worship as born again Christians. And Tim Ballard is not either.
Right, right, right. And I met Jim briefly. I wouldn't say I know him. I met him, and he does we were. It was a session after one of the viewings, and when you hear him, he sounds just like a born again Christian. However, later on, he brought in some of that Mary stuff, and I was like, "Yep, there it is." So him and what's his partner? Passion of Christ.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson are, I believe, Catholic mystics. I don't have 100% proof on that, but that's the rumor. So let's keep going here. So now what they want to do with Pompeo, who is the ex-cartel member, they want to build a fake high-end sex hotel, and they connected an investor whose name I forgot to write down, and so they start to get this thing going. After a while, they have no success finding the girl. Remember, this is all about the girl. And so DHS tells them to shut down the operation. Okay? And so Pompeo tells the story of why he does it, why he rescues these kids. He said he had a night where he pretty much had sex with a 25-year-old girl, but it turned out that the girl was actually 16. After that, he wanted to kill himself. He felt so much remorse, and says he made. He didn't say this. He alluded to he made a deal with God that if he's real, and he claims that God told him to rescue kids, I don't know what God he's talking about. It's not really explained because these things are ambiguous. Most people are going to assume that he's talking about the God of the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, so so after that, Tim quits his job to avoid the bureaucracy and the red tape. The investor backs out, then is convicted after Tim talks to him about. He sent him a note to his chauffeur about forget the rest of just at least save one child. So he's convicted in that, and he gets back on board. And so now, after they regroup, they go to Bogota, Colombia, and they meet with the actual traffickers, the ones that will lead to this young lady. And so now DHS is back on board with the mission, joint venture with CTI. I forgot what that means. Some Colombian something, special forces or something. I don't know, cops or whatever.
Yeah.
And so this is where they set up a fake party where close to 30 kids up. Oh, okay. Let me back up a little bit. So they had this meeting with in Colombia. So they meet Ghislaine, they meet other people um, that are connected here. The whole group except for one person, the main leader. Okay. So now we're at the party, and they bring uh, close to 30 kids. They're expecting 50. Okay, and so it's a fake party, and so these kids are coming in, and they do exchange cash for them. The main guy shows up. I forgot his name. Really smug looking dude that'll probably just kill you for breathing. Okay, so Tim almost get killed for protecting a male kid from getting raped by the same guy. Okay, and I don't know if this part is true or if it's just some Hollywood to get attention because maybe you're getting bored in the movie. I don't know. So anyway, after they get out of that predicament, more kids arrive, and it ends up to be in 54 kids. So they bought even more, meaning over the limit. And so when CTI HIS raid the party, and all the kids are rescued, but the sister isn't there. All right. I'll stop right there and let you say if you want to comment on anything.
So I think the CTI, because I went up and actually looked it up. I think it's the technical investigation team is division of their Office of the Attorney General in Colombia. So it's kind of like a part of their federalized law enforcement agency.
Okay.
Maybe very like a structuralized part of like the FBI, for example, in America.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
And,
would be it.
and
Um,
any
and
idea? Okay, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and I mean nothing else too much. Else I got maybe a little bit something later. Well, I guess I go ahead and say it now. So, Operation, because we're going to set up to what's about to happen in the movie. Um, Operation Underground Railroad actually put out a statement in that um what they call Operation Triple Take. Where Tim poses as a doctor, right? And goes into the Colombian jungle um to save the girl. Okay.
Right.
Um Operation Underground Railroad stated that that never happened. And what you mentioned was that it was kind of like an amalgamation of like different um operations
Yeah. Yeah.
um that did occur. Like Tim supposedly did do one in Haiti and one in the Dominican Republic. Okay. So it's just interesting, like it was kind of like, yeah, there might be some truth to what happened during the movie as far as actually Operation Underground Railroad and the acts of Tim Ballard.
Right.
And then later we'll talk about, through the investigative journalist Lynn Packer,
Hmm.
what what really happened, possibly.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right. So that happened. The rescue, and everybody's smiling, the kids are happy, they're kind of doing this thing, I forgot what that's called, and playing around, laughing now. And so Tim asks the Pompeo, what's that? And he says that's the sound of freedom. So that's where the movie title comes from. And so now the father gets the bad news that his daughter is not found. All right. But since they had these clean arrests, they investigate one of the thugs. And he tells what happened to the sister. She was sold to rebels in a terrain that's very dangerous. And no one wants to take on the mission because of that. Right? Um, let's see here. So it's sanctioned by DHS at the last minute. And they're going to go in there as UN peacekeepers or something. Right? So on the way, they came up with a plan and disguised themselves as doctors with medical
Yep.
supplies to the area, vaccine. So on the way, the rebels take one of them. First they were firing warning shots, and Tim didn't take a gun with him, which was smart. If that's what was the whole case, like that's reality. That's very smart. Um, and so they take Tim, not Pompeo, because and Pompeo went on the mission, and so they take him at gunpoint, and also he reminded them to take the vaccines. All right. So then,
Which
Tim,
is very common with United Nations humanitarian programs like the World Food Program.
yeah,
So that is factual.
right, yes. And UN is a, oh my gosh, terrible place,
Yes.
terrible organization, especially when it comes to vaccinating uh, other countries. All right, so then Tim, when he gets to the village, and these guys are serious people. They'll shoot you in a heartbeat, right? And so when he gets to the village, he meets who's called Alacron. Alacron, he's the leader, and they play him up as a guy that's not dumb, but not the smartest either. Okay. So then, as Tim is giving him the papers to show that this is a legit mission, he burns the papers. It's like, no, you're gonna follow what I say, right? And so then he's allowed to go around the village to um, test people to see if they have the sickness, cholera, I think,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And so, but he's on his mission to find the girl, and they find them in I don't know what that thing's called. That they're stepping on the leaves and whatnot, um, making something out of that.
They were making coke. It was coca leaves. They're making
Cocoa
cocaine.
leaves. Okay, all
Mhm.
right. So they make okay, all right. So then he finds the girl by spotting her tattoo. I don't know how he knew to find the tattoo. I don't know. It's a little hole in the script there.
It's definitely a movie trope. It's a MacGuffin
Right,
kind of
right.
thing. So
Yeah. So he sees the tattoo on the back of her neck and calls out her name. And he's so excited that he found her that he kind of stumbles on his words. And Alacron comes and is like, "Is she sick?" Because Tim doesn't know that that's his girl, And he's like, "No, she's okay. She's fine." And so it starts to get a little tricky to get her out because he's surrounded by people, and there are other young girls there as well, right? And so anyway, nighttime comes, and the rebels are getting drunk, sitting around a campfire and playing music, right? And so now Tim sneaks around the camp to find the girl, and lo and behold, he comes up to Alacron's house and over the girl, trying to wake her up, but she screams because clearly she's been abused. She doesn't know what's going on. How do I know I could trust you? Because he gave her a message earlier that he's there to rescue her.
yeah,
And not in those words, but So she screams, and the scream is lightly heard by Alacron. So he turns around. He's the one playing the music. He turns around and looks, but he's not alarmed like that. And so he leaves the guys there at the camp, and he comes back to check on her. And he's like, "Why'd you scream?" but she doesn't really give him obviously the right answer, and so Tim is hiding under the bed, and I don't know. It kind of didn't make sense to me, but let's go along. It's a movie, right?
Yes.
And so Alarcon gets into a tussle. Okay, so Alarcon now he takes the girl, puts her on his main bed, and he wants to get it in with her. Okay,
Hmm.
but at this time now, Tim is sneaking up behind him. They start to wrestle, and Alarcon gets his neck broken.
Yeah.
All right. And so from there now, Tim and the sister flees through the night to the shore, but the leader Alacron is found dead. And so the next guard, he's kind of sounds the alarm in a sense and calls Piranha. Piranha is another guy. And so he wakes up just in time to see that they're already got away in the boat. So there's nothing they could do but try to follow them,
Hmm.
right? And so so they barely escaped to the shoreline and met up with Pompeo and the rest, and they were getting shot at. And in fact, this is now a village opposite of the main village they just escaped from, and in there people are shooting at them.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe they're all connected. I don't know. It's not really explained, but they're shooting at them. Maybe it's for uh, action scene, so you don't get too bored. I don't know, but they barely escape. And so next, the father meets up with his child, and in the hospital, and pretty much that's all the important notes on the movie. And I'm going to bring up some screenshots here in a minute. I loaded them in the wrong section, so I'll bring them up in a minute to show you some of the stuff that they showed us in the before the credits of the movie. So, gonna be loading up here in a second.
The stuff at the very end where Tim Ballard's addressing Congress.
Yeah, and all of that. Give me 2 seconds here, guys. Oh, got two more.
I mean, overall, the movie was well acted.
Yeah,
It was well shot. There were some plot holes, obviously, like you had mentioned. It was never like discussed, like you mentioned about the girl's tattoo. We never found out exactly why she had it or why you know how could how Tim Ballard was able to spot her using it, right? So it was kind of like
yeah,
a plot device. They
yeah.
could have at least given us a little bit more reason why it was there,
Right.
right? You
And
know,
I'm thinking, okay, I get it. Some people might brand you for to claim you like
but they
cow.
could have easily just mentioned that, you
Exactly.
know.
Yeah.
It would have given it more significance and kind of it just being like a plot device, but no reason why it's even there. Um,
Exactly.
and it was and I also it's interesting. It's dare I say it, action packed to some degree. There's some
Yeah.
tension in it.
Yeah.
The music is well done
Yeah. The
within the
score is
movie.
good. Yeah.
And it definitely builds tension throughout it.
Mhm.
So I mean, as far as it being, not a Hollywood blockbuster as far as production and cinematography goes, I thought it's pretty good. I mean, it is an interesting movie.
Yeah.
If anything, you have to give it that. Is it's not boring.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Um, here. I'm looking up the numbers here. But before we get to that, let me show you. So this is the scene here. I usually show a lot of screenshots. I just didn't have time to get all those rounded up for you guys. So this is the scene where she is reunited with her dad. And there's another plot device where when the movie started out, she was playing like singing a song in her
yeah,
bed.
she was like dancing, right?
Yeah, and she was sitting in her bed and doing something and singing. And by the end of the movie, she's back into that position. Right. So now then it goes to these scenes here. Tim's testimony about the Colombian operation led the United States Congress to pass legislation increasing international cooperation in child sex trafficking. Then it goes, it's the same thing. Okay, so that's another picture of Congress. And then it says human trafficking is $150 billion a year business. The United States is one of the top destinations for human trafficking and is among the largest consumer of child sex. Then it goes millions of slaves are children, or this might have been the last one, but anyway, let's see here. There are more humans trapped in slavery today than any other time in history, including when slavery was legal. All right. So, anything you want to say about those?
As far as now, definitely human trafficking and the consumption, though abhorrent, of child pornography, is large within the United States of America. A lot of child pornography, especially that was exposed in ElsaGate, for example. I don't remember if you remember that, Chris, where people stumbled upon that they were playing inappropriate videos on YouTube, kind of like incorporating children's themes of like Elsa and Anna from Frozen,
Uh,
and they have like they would insert vaccines into it. They would insert an inflation type I'm trying to be polite as I can, like fetish type stuff, kind of like indoctrinating kids into sex, indoctrinating kids into getting vaccinations and stuff like that and everything. And there were animated videos of this being produced, as well as videos being shot with adult actors and
yeah.
actresses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And there in the comment section, there'd be a lot of funneling people into child pornography sites, and possibly even codes of human trafficking in these videos as well too.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of those videos and a lot of that production was found out to be done in Eastern Europe and in Russia.
Mm,
Okay. So it is very heavily over there,
right.
just
Right.
as much as it is here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
And so to claim that, I kind of think is not necessarily, it's true, but then not necessarily true too.
mm,
And it also kind of makes me wonder if it's for kind of like donate to Operation Underground Railroad, which they've kind of used those tactics in the past of kind of like fundraising,
yeah.
right, and stuff like that and everything.
Mm,
And so I'm not discounting, you know, the amount that happens here in the United States of foreign travelers going over to Thailand, for example, which is
mm,
notorious for pedophilic sex trafficking, or anything that happens here in the United States. It's just that I don't know if we are number one in the world,
right.
and even by population wise, I mean, how horrific is it in China, right? So by
Oh yeah.
population rise, you would think that China would actually probably be number one in the world, just because by population alone, right?
and and also the organ harvesting issue
Yes.
with
Yes.
goes along with that. So
So I just don't know. To me, it seems like that's kind of driving emotionality, where there is some truth to it, that it does happen here, obviously, and it is
yeah,
horrific. I'm not discounting that,
yeah,
but I'd like to see the actual true statistics of that.
yeah,
Okay. If
right,
we
right.
ever could see them,
And even
you
if
know.
even if we went to the alphabet soup, start with the one that starts with a F,
Hmm.
right? Who say we can trust the information
Sure.
because they're just awful. But
Yeah.
so this is the numbers here. Let me see if I can get this up here to be spotlight. Um, no one expected the movie to do good, and let's see here. Domestic, it's made 184 million, so it's an official blockbuster. Where's the worldwide? Should be up here somewhere. Oh, there it is. So worldwide here, it made 243 million. Okay, and here's something interesting. When it came out, we had the mainstream media attacking it like crazy, saying, "Oh no, don't go see it, da da da. It's connected to QAnon and all this stuff," but it wasn't. It wasn't connected to that. Even though Jim has some leaning toward that, the movie has nothing to do with QAnon and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Now, when it started oh, it was going up against Indiana Jones and the last Indiana Jones movie that just came out, and that movie bombed, but this movie um, succeeded because there was not really that much other competition out there, and the Indiana Jones movie was trash. I'll talk about that another time. So it made a lot of
It was
money.
bad.
Yeah. so so in the meantime now, as the weeks are going by and everybody's watching and sharing and whatnot, according to them, that the international crowd started to call and say, "Give us this movie. We need this movie. We need this movie." And that's when it really started to take off worldwide. because this was just an American release. If for those that don't know, right? And so there we have it. Um, I know there's probably in some of the theaters now. I don't have any videos to show you on this, but you could look it out, check it out for yourself. In some of the theaters, not the theater company, but people within inside the theaters, they were actually setting off fire alarms and other things to other disruptions, turning down the AC in the theater that they were showing in to get people to not see the movie. So what we have here, we have a dichotomy here of or trichotomy if you want to. We have a movie that's opening eyes to people. Then we have people in the MSN and people probably crazy far lefties that don't want people to see because they're probably complicit in this. Okay? So why wouldn't you want people to see something that's exposed in such a horrible thing, right? All right. So that all those things happen, but then the third issue here, as we start to get into more, I don't think I forgot any other pertinent details, but if I did, I'll bring them back up. Now we're going to get into more of the controversy dealing with Tim Ballard, the Mormon Church, and I don't even like calling it church, but Mormonism, and those other issues. Where do you want to start with that?
Okay,
Oh,
so
before
okay,
you even start, this is not a personal attack on anybody. This is just stuff that's out there. It's easy to find. I didn't see it until somebody else showed me. Okay. Um, it's not an attack on a movie. It's not an attack on kids, because clearly, as we've stated before, it's a very important topic, and people need to know about it. However, there are issues. So let's start. Yeah, I'm ready for you.
okay. So a couple things. So um, all right. So where do we start? Okay. So I started researching into and coming across Tim Ballard's various connections, Chris, that he had with certain organizations. So one was Afghanistan, um, the Afghanistan World Fund, and within the Afghanistan World Fund, which was brought to the World Foundation, should I say, that was brought to my attention by Robbie Martin. We see that their senior board of advisors included such people as Dr. Henry Kissinger, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and then Ballard was on their board of directors as well too, with other with famous Hollywood actors and actresses like Anne Heche, for example.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, so like, what are does Tim Ballard have any connections to kind of like people or organizations that we consider part of the world order, right? Or at least in line with the world order. And what did Operation Underground Railroad in and of itself promote, and who did they ally themselves with? So one was the United Nations. I had brought out through my research that there were times where Tim Ballard addressed the United Nations within of itself. Fine, I can understand that, right? But they also made him an advisor in human trafficking, too, as well, which was concerning.
Mhm.
At one time, uh, uh, Operation Underground Railroad was also promoting Ashton Kutcher's supposed anti-human trafficking organization known as Thorn.
Mhm.
Okay, so I would be curious to see if Tim Ballard, who is no longer part of Operation Underground Railroad and formed his own thing called the Spear Fund, right, which is the tip of the spear, which is kind of like a U.S. SOCOM special operations motto in the United States of America. It's very interesting that he chose that. It was so I don't know if he would still support Thorn or if Operation Underground Railroad would still support them, but there have been various allegations, against Thorne and against Ashton Kutcher, especially with Ashton Kutcher recently and Mila Kunis, his wife, defending Scientologist Danny Masterson,
Uh,
right, in the letters that they had wrote to defend him. And so, there's a lot of allegations within the truther communities about that. Another issue or organization that brought kind of was alarming to me was Operation Underground Railroad pushing the anti-trafficking organization Polaris.
Yeah.
which based off the North Star, right? And Polaris, working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which um, was started by John Walsh, Megan Walsh. John Walsh's daughter has brought numerous allegations against him and the so-called death, murder, or trafficking of her brother and John Walsh's son.
Yeah.
And so NetMech was also founded by the Reagan administration too as well. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of curious
So
connections between NetMech. I won't go into it all here, but Polaris uses kind of like trafficking, like identification, like software and promotion of using GPS, kind of like uh, software to be able to, keep track of your children, which
yeah.
fine, I understand that, but using a massive, organization like that is kind of like, obviously you want to know where your kids are, right, to the best of your
Yeah.
ability, right? But at
It's
the same time, you're feeding that data to who knows who has that data,
right,
you know?
and it's like they've created a problem, and now they bring you the solution,
Yes,
and that's their modus all the time, right?
which is the Hegelian dialectic,
Yeah.
problem, reaction, solution.
Hmm.
So that I don't know if they still push Polaris or not, but that was a very interesting, concerning connection. Of course, you have Tim Ballard's ties to the upper echelon of the Mormon Church. For example, one of the major fundraisers for Operation Underground Railroad, and someone who was Tim Ballard's mentor, and someone who financed supposedly him walking away from the United States Department of Homeland Security to start Operation Underground Railroad, is the Mormon prophet and
Hmm.
apostle M. Russell Ballard, who was a direct descendant of Hiram Smith, who was Joseph Smith's brother. Okay. And so, M. Russell Ballard used to push Operation Underground Railroad heavily, and Tim Ballard used to discuss how the work through Operation Underground Railroad, and you can look all this up through all this through the various YouTube videos of documentation that investigative journalist Len Packer on his YouTube channel has
Hmm.
shown, the quotes and articles and clips of these people saying these things. It's all there. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about, I can show the source of anything I'm mentioning to back it up, but a lot of it comes through his excellent work exposing Operation Underground Railroad and Tim Ballard. That M. Russell Ballard stated, Chris, that the job of under Operation Underground Railroad primarily isn't saving children;
Mm.
it's to proselytize for the Mormon Church and to fundraise
Right.
and prophetize to feed back to the Mormon Church.
And pause for a second here. So for those that don't know, because I know we're spitting a lot of information to you,
Yes.
um, the Mormon Church is not just based on Joseph Smith's testimony, but it's also based on Freemasonry, the same upper echelon of people that protect each other and do fundraisings and all sorts of stuff to give back to their grand lord, Abaddon, Apollo, the the demon released in the book of Revelation. Okay? If you didn't know that, now you know. And so they have all these different names for these same gods, little g. And so what he's saying here, you have to have that mind frame, that framework to actually go along with this. Go ahead.
No, you're right. And so it's interesting, kind of. You also have the allegations of the Mormon Church and human trafficking, as
Mm.
well as the connections of kind of like this Mormon cult, kind of like possibly off branch, and connections to the Nexium cult down there in Mexico that my friend Recluse has talked about at length, as well as you also have Warren Jeffs, right? As well, and kind of like that sect spinoff of Mormonism, where he was practicing pedophilia and polygamy, right? And so it does seem like, through a lot of institutions, that institutionalized pedophilia and human trafficking occurs, and the Mormon Church having such money and financing and power, obviously, they are involved in it as well too, and that is well documented. And so again, I never heard Tim Ballard, Operation Underground Railroad. Again, like, they're Mormons, right? So in theory, they should speak out against it within their own church,
Right.
right? But you never see that.
Yeah.
And so that's an issue in and of itself. And then you have the so-called satanic ritual abuse allegations of M. Russell Ballard and this man named Gordon Bowen, which I won't go into too much detail here because of the YouTube algorithms, but you can go watch Lynn Packer's video on it, where he kind of downplays satanic ritual abuse, but I do believe that obviously that it is major, and it does exist.
Oh
But
yeah.
there are connections between this whole group, including Tim Ballard himself, but less Tim Ballard, more Mitt Romney, Council for National Policy member Mitt Romney, and M. Russell Ballard in the allegations of the Mormon Church having its own satanic ritual abuse allegations, okay, that have recently have surfaced, through the past investigations of this past year, okay, which is pretty somewhat known within uh, you know conspiracy researchers, but maybe not. But if you search on X or Google, it should come up. I know that Derek Bros, who I disagree with him obviously with his New Age beliefs, did do some research into it.
Mm,
And it is there. It's something, so Lynn Packer does talk about it, right? And Lynn Packer also talks about in depth, which children have they truly rescued or saved? Do we have any accountability there? Where is the money gone to? There's allegations against the people that Operation Underground Railroad worked with Tim Ballard, as far as agents of improprieties, of whether it's drugs or alcohol or inappropriate actions or prostitution, which is very similar to NGOs in foreign countries and the United
yeah.
Nations and the allegations against them, right?
Hmm.
Okay. And all this was before a lot of this, well, not all of it. I'll say a lot of it was before The Sound of Freedom even came out. Okay. Now it has been magnified since the movie has come out. But a lot of these allegations, like Lynn Packer has been investigating Operation Underground Railroad for years before The Sound of Freedom even came out.
Mm,
You know,
okay.
and then you have, and I'm probably going to forget some stuff. I've done 3.5 video, almost like 6 to 8 hours covering all this, and there's even more that's come out since then.
Yeah.
That let's see here. You kind of have like the Mormon mafia. So you have the upper echelon of the Mormon church, whether it's Ballard or Romney, financing Operation Underground Railroad and the Sound of Freedom. You also have Carlos Slim, right? Which even you mentioned before, Angel Studios had picked it up. That Carlos Slim had been financing the movie, which came out of an interview out of Tim Ballard's own mouth.
Mm,
2018, 2019 roughly was the time that he was talking about that Carlos Slim was financing the movie. And we know that in the movie credits itself, that Carlos Slim's son, Patricio Slim Domit, was executive producer of the movie as well too. So it still continued on even to this day. And
yeah.
of course, there's allegations against Carlos Slim, with kind of backing Hillary Clinton, and
Mm,
allegations supposedly allegedly of trafficking and drugs allegedly within the Slim Empire too. And so I don't quite know what all that's about, of if he's involved in supposedly allegedly, and he is a telecommunications billionaire
mm,
in Mexico. um why he would go to fund this movie if he is himself involved in such things,
right. Right.
allegedly. um and then you have something that I was never able to substantiate but seems legitimate, in that there was see if I can try to oh yeah, there was a release by the Sovereign Military Order Temple of Jerusalem, or the Knights Templar,
Oh,
that on June 20th, 2015, that they had knighted Timothy Blaine Ballard, Paul Hutchinson, and Sean David Reyes. Okay. Now, what's interesting about that is I couldn't really find Timothy Ballard's true middle name.
okay.
Okay, and I looked for a long time to see if that was him. But what I can say is, well, Paul Hutchinson worked and was a financier for Operation Underground Railroad. He has his own allegations out against him that are kind of odd. That though they were reported by Vice News, when you look at the totality of the evidence, and I am not a fan of Vice News by any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah, yeah.
it does seem like it might be correct where he allegedly uh, felt the this is graphic. I apologize. Felt the breaths of an underage traffic victim,
Mm,
and trying. He claims it was under law enforcement. It was like a law enforcement setting.
yeah.
Um, for what reason? Clearly, I don't really know.
Mm,
That he was also posing as a wealthy investor in sex trafficking too, as well, which is interestingly enough. I don't know, with all the allegations against um, the Mormon Church and trafficking, and all the allegations against um, possibly of Operation Underground Railroad's involvement. That's quite odd. And so I don't know if Hutchinson or Reyes or Ballard are Knights of Malta, that they were knighted, but it
mm,
does seem very likely with all three of them being knighted at the same time, and was part of the Templar press release.
interesting.
Um, any other questions? I mean, I have more to talk about, but I just stopped just so you can ask questions, or if anybody's asking questions or anything.
Um, yeah. As a quick side note, this is not what this whole thing is about, but Ron DeSantis is a knight of Malta. Might want to check that out. But so let's see here. In the chat, uh, Dylan Air Purse. I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher your name. I asked friends that had seen the movie if they would chip their kids, and they said yes, they would do. House due to how unsafe the world is. See, fear makes people do a lot of crazy things. I would never chip children,
No.
not outside of my family or inside. Never. They're not animals, and even animals I don't like that happening to them. So, Dallin, if that's how you pronounce your name, she says, what was that the whole point of the movie? I don't know what that part.
As far as the chipping is getting is
Oh,
driving
okay.
fear, um, maybe it might have been a part, whether they realize it or not. Um, I'm not going to say for sure that we can prove that or know that, but it is a possibility, because it does oh, bring awareness, but it also strikes fear at the same time too, as well, right? So it's kind of
Mhm.
like a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And we know they have like the Mormon chip, for example, that a lot of people were bringing up, which not Mormon chip, I'm sorry, the Mason chip, that they were, the Masons developed a way to tack and trag a person's children that they were selling many years ago. To quote unquote deter supposedly human trafficking and child kidnapping and molestation. And so again, I don't know, but I would not be surprised if there were more nefarious elements behind the Sound of Freedom, if that may be a possibility, but it's speculation and a hypothesis. There's not really much other than them working with Polaris, and that's what Polaris wanted to do, or NECMEC, mentioning the same thing, or the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, ICMEC, where Hillary Clinton was a board member, and so, again, through Microsoft Photo ID, NECMEC is catalyzing and pulling all this child pornography off the internet in the hope that they can find victims, which sounds good in theory, but then again, who's watching the Watchmen? Where's their accountability for this? What is happening to all of that horrific media that they're categorizing, and who has the opportunity to view it? How safe is it? Where is it going? Like, that's very concerning when it comes to NECMEC, and I'm not the only person who's discussed that before. And so
Yeah.
Operation Underground Railroad's working with all of these human trafficking organizations, Chris,
Hmm.
but yet a lot of them have very sketchy ties.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, um, I usually don't do ratings. Okay,
Okay.
I mention this now because we forgot to mention it earlier. But if I had to rate it, I would say it's a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And to your point a minute ago, um, the part in the beginning of the movie, the I think I'm not sure if that officer left the job or not, but when they were looking at the visuals, he said he's been to murder scenes and everything, and this stuff, this kind of is worse. It hurts him
Hmm.
to the core. And how many children have you actually rescued? And the answer I think was none, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever it was. So, uh, based on what you know or have investigated, how many have been rescued, if any?
Through Operation Underground Railroad,
Yeah,
I would give the same answer that Lynn Packer does, which is we have no concrete proof that I see or he
yeah,
sees of any children actually being rescued by Operation Underground Railroad. It doesn't mean they haven't.
mhm,
I just haven't. There's no concrete evidence that
yeah,
I've seen where they're really, saving children, which is important, right? Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't,
right, right, right.
but there is, there are, it's not just me coming on here and saying, where's the children? There are
Yeah,
multiple, researchers, some of them well established, that are asking the same thing. Where's all this money going to? Other than, Tim Ballard, getting paid hundreds of these, and his wife hundreds of thousands of dollars or more per year, to, do the work they do for Operation Underground Railroad. And if they're really saving children, fine, I don't have an issue with that.
hmm,
But what are they doing? And then, like, someone on your YouTube channel had brought up to my attention that it was in something that I had missed in kind of like because Tim Ballard's being sued right now in the court of law over inappropriate allegations with women, right?
hmm,
And it was brought through that lawsuit that supposedly, allegedly, whether we don't, this is what was told to those women, but not necessarily, this is not that Tim's been put under oath or asked about. Okay.
yeah.
That he was using ketamine to go into K-holes to communicate with the angel Moroni, which is a demon. Okay. And the demon was telling him that he would become Utah senator, later president of the United States of America, and would later prep the world for the second coming of Jesus. Okay.
The fake G.
S- Yes, of course.
Okay.
But, and he is running for Utah. He's running for, I believe, either, I think it's a Senate. I think he's running for a Senate seat, I
Yeah.
think. And it might be House of Representative seat. I don't remember, but he is doing that. And I do want to thank CD3482 who brought that attention, in the comment section.
Yeah.
So again, I don't like.
I mean, it's a lot of sketchy stuff. It's a lot. I mean, you have say Glenn Beck came out against
Mhm.
Ballard the other day. I can't remember the details. They're both Mormons. So is it just cannibalization or there's some facts to this stuff?
You have the Mormon Church coming out against Ballard too as
Mhm.
well, right? So they
Yeah.
try to protect their vested interests. Ballard worked on the board of Glenn Beck's Nazarene Fund, which supposedly they're rescuing Christians out of the Middle East. But as Ballard showed in his own investigation, how many Christians are they really rescuing out of the Middle East?
Yeah.
Because majority of the Christian flight from Middle Eastern countries happened long before the Nazarene Fund in the mid to early 2010s ever got involved doing this. Like after the beginning of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, Christians like a vacuum left
Yeah.
those regions. So again, how many people have they and if they are doing that, that's a good thing.
Hmm.
But I don't know if they are. And now, granted, Tim Ballard is stepped down, obviously, and it took a while for Glenn Beck to denounce Tim Ballard, which I understand supposedly allegedly they're friends. Okay, I get that, but he's also, you got to think they're monetarily tied to the hip too, Chris, in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I don't know. Like you mentioned Angel Studios earlier, and something that I found interesting about Angel Studios was that recently GigaFund, which is run by Luke Nozak, who's one of the founders of PayPal, and was on the board of ResearchGate, which is funded by Peter Thiel and has worked for Peter Thiel, GigaFund.
Hey,
Uh,
pause for a second, please.
yes,
A second. Can you explain to people who Peter Thiel is?
yes. Peter Thiel is a supposedly conservative, um, uh, wealthy financier, who I believe is not. I think he's a snake. He is not a born again Christian. He is, a homosexual. Is in a homosexual relationship. He has, I don't believe homosexual marriage, but he has a husband. Uh, you know, and
Yeah.
um, and uh, and he's been, he runs Palantir. Obviously, he founded PayPal. Palantir has a lot to do with the tracking and surveillance system that we have in the United States and around the world, and they were a big part of Operation Tiberius Kirk, which is part of Operation Warp Speed. I won't go
Right.
into it in depth here,
Right.
but if you want to
Yeah.
go to my We Read the Documents YouTube channel and look into that, I've provide documents and why that is nefarious. But
And
he's not our guy.
so, since he started PayPal and Musk was a part of PayPal in the beginning, is he still connected with Musk?
They're still very friendly to each other, and Founders Fund was one of the largest investors into SpaceX, which is Peter Thiel's fund.
Okay. Well, there you go. Right. Okay. So continue. You were about to.
So, you could argue that through GigaFund, Thiel has a significant vested interest into Angel Studios. Okay,
Okay.
which Angel Studios puts forth The Chosen, which
Hmm.
again Jenkins is from
Yeah.
Mormonism in The
Yeah.
Chosen,
Yeah.
and so. I played Jenkins talk about how for most of the episodes he's consulting a Catholic priest, a
Hmm.
Protestant preacher, and a Jewish rabbi. Okay, so
Interface.
yep, that which should concern anyone.
Yes, it should.
Okay, and so again, like we're not we're not like the mainstream media in that we're up here to kind of like point at Angel Studios, point at Tim Ballard, point at Jim Caviezel, and say, well, they're part of QAnon, or, um, you know, they're, you know, uh, are kind of like progressive value reasons of why we're talking about these stuff, like
Yeah.
how the left would do. They kind of frame it in that light, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, we're here as born again Christians to warn the brethren, sisters and
Mhm.
brothers out there,
Yeah.
that who is you know behind the movie ultimately, which is verifiable, the Mormon Church.
Yeah.
And we have to, again, when people see Glenn Beck, when people see Tim Ballard, they think that they're talking about Jesus. They think that they're talking about God,
Yeah.
but they're not.
Nope.
And Mormonism, is too much to go on, to
Yeah.
discuss of why it's another gospel, but it definitely is another gospel. Okay. And it's not that, you know, they're not bringing this information out there. And it's not important to be aware of human trafficking and child trafficking and the horrific elements that go along with that. You and I are not saying that at all.
Right.
But I myself personally, I can't recommend anybody donate to Operation Underground Railroad, even if Tim Ballard has nothing to do with it anymore.
No, you have a point, because, like I said earlier, Disney, whether everybody's complicit or not, is doing things to harm children. So I myself said I'm not paying for any Marvel, Fox, Lucasfilm movies. If I review it, trust me, I didn't go to the theater. Okay, I found another way. I don't pay for that anymore because just simple. I mean, they're already bad,
Yeah.
but we see a lot of movies by bad people, right? But the fact that they're trying to hurt children disgusts me to the core, and I will not see their movies, at least in the theater. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess one final thing in that aspect, and um, is that there is a possibility, I guess, and I put forth this in my series, that the polarization of the mainstream media to come out against this film,
Yeah,
okay, for objections that we aren't bringing up as born again Christians right here, of reasons why people should be wary of it, okay? So they kind of frame it in like in a progressive QAnon, like lens, okay?
right.
Is maybe, and you had the pay it forward campaign as well too, right? Which in and of itself is great marketing. Money come from in the generation of the hype too, and uh, Lynn Packer kind of talks about that a lot,
Yeah,
okay, in his most recent videos. So again, ultimately, if this is for proselytation into Mormonism, which is their stated goal for this,
hmm
then is it a possibility that Satan and the world order is kind of putting up this false paradigm in that there was a lot of, bad negative press and kind of like the Barbara Streisand effect where they're like, don't go see this, don't go see this, don't go see this, to drive people to see the movie.
yeah.
I don't know, but it's something that I entertain as the possibility.
But it's kind of common sense, right? Most people, when you tell them don't do something, they get more interested. you know, so I knew that would be the effect when they started the whole campaign to the media, trying to bash the movie and whatnot, and all the things that were coming out at the time, you know. So I was like, this movie's gonna make buku money because now people, even people that don't know anything about the subject matter, are going to go see it,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. And like I said before, earlier, the foreign film companies started to come. I'm sorry, the movie theaters started to say, "Hey, send us the movie," because the hype just got, to a fever pitch.
Yeah.
And also, for people that don't really understand the whole theater setup, the movie system, and how it works, when you spend a budget, I forgot what was. Do you remember the budget of this film?
It was not that large. I think it
Yeah, it was
was
small.
only 10 million,
Okay,
roughly
so
15 million, somewhere in there.
all right, so you have to make three times that to break even, just to break even. And that's not counting marketing, right? So they put millions of dollars into marketing as well. So you need to understand that to pay it forward and all this stuff, much money went into that. But they made way over, because see, when you see stuff like Marvel, um, they make $1 billion movie. The real numbers came out because they used some of the structuring in Europe to film some of these, and those numbers don't usually get reported in America. And so some people that have dug up, Star Wars Force Awakens was $1 billion movie, but the budget was like two, three, no, like 400 or 500 million. They didn't really make that much money on that movie. Okay, so that just gives you a framework to understand how the movie system works. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess too, as well, does it drive people to, like, let's say people didn't, I mean, I would assume most Christians know who Jim Caviezel is and have seen The Passion of the Christ, right? Which is a Catholic film in and of itself.
Right.
And supposedly we're getting the sequel next year.
Yeah.
Allegedly, supposedly. Okay.
Right.
So does this bring Jim Caviezel back into people's mind to set them up to go see The Passion of the Christ? Because we had Mel Gibson also pushing Sound of Freedom as well.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't know. And then you also, it does, I will say this, though you don't have direct QAnon operation ties to the Sound of Freedom, you do have Jim Caviezel believing in the QAnon operation.
Mhm.
And then the things that he's saying where they show the film at Mar-a-Lago, right?
Yeah.
And Caviezel, calling Trump Q plus, which is what they, with the QAnon operation, they call Trump as the head of the QAnon operation, as well as Caviezel talking that Trump is um, Moses and then later King David.
Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons going on, even outside of that. Even with some Jewish Messianic Jews comparing them to different figures from the Bible. I wouldn't go that far, but you know.
King Cyrus, for example,
Mhm.
and even saying that he is the Messiah too. I've seen that as well.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's
you know,
dangerous. That's
at
dangerous.
at or was it the Heritage Foundation Israel? They gave him a silver crown to put on top of his head.
Hmm.
And so, and you also have for the whole Great Reset versus the Great Awakening narrative, you have Tim Ballard talking about how his work and the movie is kind of like a light unto the world in of itself, right? And kind of is going to shed dark to light. He said that in numerous interviews.
Yeah.
And so I know again as Christians we are supposed to reflect Jesus and be a light unto the world, but he's not a born again Christian, he's a
Right.
Mormon.
Yeah.
So what
And that's
light?
that's the thing, guys. For you guys, if you don't understand world religion, cults, and you always have to define the terms. Faith to you is something else to a cult, and other terms we use. Okay, so never just listen to what they say and just buy it, because a lot of people they're trained to lie, really, you know. So it doesn't matter if it's a Muslim or if it's a Mormon. You gotta define all the terms. Who is Jesus? Who is God? Um, I believe in God. Well, which God? You always have to define those terms, especially with these cults like Mormonism, Scientology, and all this stuff. Because everyone now, I just know I saw it grow to a really high level where everybody's using the term God, and you'll be right next to that person and say God bless you, and they say God bless you too, but they're not talking about Jesus, you know. So anyway, go ahead.
Is there anything you have to say in
Well,
closing, Chris, or anything? Was I too harsh in my criticisms? And
no, I don't think so. Because I mean, even with the paper I have here, I'll read some of it. I sent it to you.
Mhm.
It says, in rare public rebuke, LDS Church condemns Tim Ballard's morally unacceptable behavior. Utah-based Faith says the anti-human trafficking activist who may seek Mitt Romney's Senate seat, there it goes, betrayed his friendship with a senior apostle. That's within the Mormon Church. We don't have apostles anymore in Christianity. Okay, an apostle is somebody that actually saw Jesus face to face. Okay, then another one. Man arrested in undercover human trafficking investigation is an LDS bishop in Utah. This is from KUTV. A man arrested as part of the undercover operation targeting human trafficking is currently the bishop of the LDS ward in Lehi, Utah. On Tuesday, detective arrested David N. Moss, 51, who is currently the bishop of the congregation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Lehi. I think that's how you pronounce it. Um, Question: is the Mormon Church behind a worldwide child trafficking ring operation out of Arizona? Via namely Liberty, October, I guess this is a source from October 11, 2019. Mormon Temple in Mesa, however you pronounce that, Arizona. Image source, Health Impact News, and da 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 da. All right, so LDS Church protects the LDS Church protects and recycles pedophiles. The story from the Church of Jesus Christ. Let's see, which originated from Freemasonry origins, which we covered, is steeped in pedophilia and SRA, satanic ritual abuse. The implications discover how and why LDS pedophiles get away with sexually abusing children via shame, exploitation, control, and via sophisticated system of cover-up. That is part and parcel of the of Freemasonry. Remember, they're a copy of Freemasonry, so they will cover up stuff right there in the courtroom too, if they're part of the whole system. Okay, let's see here. Past lawsuits. Um, this is a quote, but soon Ballard's aggressive sureness began to scare me, and Gallagher, who is the U.S. State Department called the leading global expert on the international law of human trafficking, published an essay critical of our tactics. Our a I'm guessing that's an organization.
Mhm.
She argued its raids showed an alarming lack of understanding about how sophisticated criminal trafficking networks must be approached and dismantled, and called our operation arrogant, unethical, and illegal.
That's Operation Underground Railroad.
Okay, got you. All right. Ballard sent the article to me and called her a female dog. You guys know what that means. Another quote: He put me in in harm's way so that I could write a story about him. Ballard did not respond to specific questions about the raid. Condemnation of Ballard: yes. All right, next quote. Planning all calls for our staff. The calls were fervent but flawed. Everybody wanted to save the kids, but no one really knew anything about these kids. We talked mostly about fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Another quote: Operation Underground Railroad is now famous for its international sting operations. They are big fundraisers. In 2015, a Silicon Valley man funded a sting with $40,000 and watched it happen in real time.
Is that Peter Thiel? I'm just putting speculation out there, but could possibly be.
Could be, yeah. With the help of Underground Railroad, a rich person can become a vigilant hero for the day. Their living room transforms into a personal situation room. For those who can't afford the situation room, Ballard carries the drama with him to every interview and every fundraiser. That drama and a real desire to save children moves a lot of donors, whether or not it's accurate. Vice recently, I think you talked about this. Vice recently investigated a few of Ballard's stories and found a pattern of uh, image bur- image burnishings and mythology building, a series of exaggerations that are in an aggregate quite misleading, and has detailed disturbingly amateurish operations like the one I attended. And the final one here: Operation Underground Railroad retains controversial firm Curtin McConkie. That's how you say it, McConkie?
McConkey.
Threatens legal action against ACJ. Anti-human trafficking organization Operation Underground Railroad claims to have personally rescued over 5,000 women and children from sex traffickers. In March 2019, ACJ began investigating an incident involving OUR, who briefly entered the Carly Gus case. Um, when OUR learned, we began questioning their operations and finances. They hired the law firm Curtin McConkie, the LDS Church legal ego, who shields them for sex abuse claims, to survey and cease and desist fearing the article's release. There's more and there's more and there's more, but those are the main points I've highlighted here. So, point
And,
being, go ahead.
and I was going to say real quick, that one website, American Crime Journal, they did a lot of good investigation into Operation Underground Railroad, and one of the most newest articles on there is owner of Nevada brothel became major stakeholder in Operation Underground Railroad. Brothel owner Lance Gilman donated 33,000 and advocated legalized prostitution at Operation Underground Gala fundraiser. Gilman bragged at a press event. Operation Underground Railroad had a couple of functions here, and I've put a ton of money in there. So Gilman ran the Mustang Ranch,
Mhm.
and I mean, what can we say? I mean, why would you take? I mean, why would you? Why would you? I mean, there's a lot of human trafficking
Yeah,
within
it just links
the
right back to
legalized Nevada brothels. I mean, let's be real
what's
here,
going
you
on.
know?
Yeah, so I mean, like we said earlier, guys, this is a triple threat here. I mean, not triple threat, but three things going on where we have the movie, which is fine, whatever, but then we have the mainstream media, whoever, seemingly coming out about saying negative things about the movie, and then we have the issues with Ballard altogether. So you have to decide if you want to see this movie, because not now I think it's on video now, physical media, and probably streaming. So you decide what you want to do. We can't tell you what to do, but let me go into the chat before. How soon before you have to leave?
Got about 15 minutes, brother.
All right. Let me go into the chat, see what people are saying here. Let's see. Future Classic DNB official says lots of wacky doctrines out there. Not everybody that says Lord, Lord shall enter. That is so true. The Lord warns us of that. And he says, many will say, Lord, Lord. And he will say, never knew them. And what they pointed out too in that passage is they pointed out spiritual things. Like, I prophesied in your name. I casted out demons in your name. All spiritual, religious things. And, did you know that there are people that are not Christian that use the name of Jesus and they actually they cast out a demon? That happens. So there's a lot of fakers out there, even though they
And,
use the name of Jesus. Mhm.
and they also say I, right? Not God did this. Didn't
Oh
I
yeah,
do
I
this?
did this.
Didn't
Yeah.
I do this?
Right, right, right. Yeah, all about self, right? Let me see here. Seems like okay. Let me see. This is from Eminem. Seems like there are more and more new wacky doctrines every day. All right. Let's see. Says future classic DNB says I don't know enough of this Peter Thiel guy. Seems to be under every rock.
It's true,
Uh,
yes.
and you know what? Since he's under every rock, I would say follow the money and see who else he's connected to. We brought up Hillary Clinton. We brought up a few other names. If it's going back to the same people we're fighting against, stay away from it. Is what I would say. Um, let's see here. Uh, all right, seems like that's it. If you have any questions, let us know before, because John has to go in a few. Um, let's see, we got a few people watching here. Don't be too silent. You can ask questions, and if we have the answers, guess what? We'll answer them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review and expose. This is not my typical review, by the way. Usually, I'm bringing out all the satanic things within the movie, but this one it doesn't. There's a few things, false god. The generality of God, or their God. So it's like, some people try to dub this a faith-based film, which usually means it's a Christian film,
Hmm.
but it's not. Not even close, right? And so the issues are real. Again, the movie's well done. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. If I had to rate it, I usually don't rate. And what about you?
I give it a 3.
Mhm.
I'll go a little bit. It was interesting nonetheless. I'll say this: it's stereotypical, maybe slightly above average popcorn flick.
Yeah,
With a message that is important, but then again, we have to be wary of who's bringing us that message. Okay, just like Joseph Smith should have realized that demons could come to you as as angels of light, like the quote unquote angel Moroni, right?
yeah,
Joseph Smith should have known that, and so you have to realize that we're not coming against this movie for the sake of coming against it or to cause division,
mhm,
or anything like that. We're just stating that as born again Christians, we have to be careful, especially with the increase push for ecumenicalism and the increased push for universalism.
yeah,
And that it's not that you can't have a conversation with someone of another belief system, though obviously we'd only believe the only true belief system is Bible believing born again Christianity, but um, it's more than that. Like this movie again, in the words of M. Russell Ballard, who's very very high up in the Mormon Church,
mhm,
okay, his goal is to proselytize ultimately for the Mormon church and to raise money.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this film was not to bring awareness to child trafficking. That's what this was for, according to them in their own words.
Right.
So, because of that, we have to be wary as brothers and sisters in Christ because Mormonism is another gospel. And there are a lot of people that see this movie who all of a sudden, will think that Tim Ballard is a great and mighty man and that they should follow him or follow Jim Caviezel. And there's born again Christians which could be under some sort of delusion or through their own ego, begin to follow these men. And then even then they could start saying, okay, so what does the Mormon church talk? They you see Mormons as being kind of like these upstanding families, right?
Mhm.
And you want to get into the carnality of that,
Yeah.
or what does the Catholic Church, teach? Are they the one true church, as Jim Caviezel would mention, right?
Right.
So then, because again, oh yeah, now I remember one thing I was going to say, I forgot, is you're right that most people at this point, because of the Great Reset to the Great Awakening, they understand the blatant evil that is in Hollywood. For the most part, if you're a born again Christian, you are aware of it.
Mhm.
Okay. More than I would say probably likely previous decades. Okay. Because it's just so blatant in your face at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just there. All right. But the sound of freedom is a lot more subtle. And just like Satan appears as an angel of light, it's a lot more subtle in the sound of freedom and what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
And it's trying to disarm you to make you think that the people within this movie are Christians, that
Mhm.
they are, trying to do acts that glorify God, right? When in reality, the stated purpose of this movie, one of the main stated purposes, is to proselytize you into Mormonism.
Mhm. Yeah. And most people just won't see it. Well, we laid out the evidence, and you could do your own research. I would suggest doing your own research because you will come upon stuff that we haven't even mentioned.
Yes.
So please do that. Let's see here. How can people find you?
Y'all can find me on YouTube on 1 Timothy 6 Ministries, Gorf Social under We've Read, X under We've Read, have a Substack, We've Read the Documents, Odyssey, We've Read the Documents, because our days are numbered here on YouTube.
Yeah.
Chris, it's sad but true.
Yeah.
And But that's where you guys can find me, and God bless everyone listening, and realize that we're not coming to talk about this stuff to bring division. We're just coming to bring this to awareness to people and to ultimately edify God and the body of Christ. And we are called to proselytize to the true gospel, the only gospel that matters, the gospel that saves, the gospel of Jesus Christ, to Mormons,
Yeah.
because they are uh, 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 you know, um, unsaved. It is another gospel, and sadly, they will perish and face a second death if they do not become born again. And so it's very important for us to do so. And it's just just to have some discernment, that just like you mentioned, and it's something we talked about through this whole broadcast. One last thing is, just because someone mentions God, just because someone mentions Jesus, doesn't mean that they are mentioning God and Jesus, the God and Jesus, of the scriptures, of God's word, of the Holy Bible. And so you have to ask. We're told to test the spirit in 1 John 4, right? Just to ask people, well, what do you truly believe? And usually through their statement of faith, you can discern of whether or not they're born again or not. And so we have to realize that as Christians, we are supposed to have a certain amount, obviously, of trust of our fellow man, and obviously goodwill to them, right? But at the same time, we're supposed to be cautious, because there are a lot of people out there, just like Satan, comes to you know, walk around the earth, to devour. There are people who may mention God, who may mention Jesus, who that is their purpose, sadly, too, as well, is to lead people away from Jesus Christ, away from God the Father. And I'm not necessarily stating in and of itself that's what Tim Ballard's purpose is. But M. Russell Ballard says that it is, with the main goal of it being proselytizing to the Mormon Church.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. More reviews are coming. I have them lined up, at least 20 movies. So one I'd say probably is probably gonna be a short review is Killers of the Flower Moon. That one has some serious Mormon, not Mormon, but Freemasonry connections in it, and they show it in the movie. So we'll see when I do that one, but that's one I'm looking forward to. And I might do something on the Marvels. Garbage. But we'll see. So thank you guys for joining. This is Hollywood Matrix. We're back on track doing movie reviews and breakdowns, decoding. And I really appreciate you guys checking it out. And please like it, share it, and discuss something in the comment section. I want to hear what you guys have to say, even if it's negative, meaning you disagree. So we'd love to hear you. So with that, thanks for joining us. And Christians, preach the gospel and don't let them burn.